Some sad news out of Mississippi today. The head of security and a deacon for a church in Gulfport, Mississippi, was murdered. He was shot multiple times and died after protecting children during a domestic violence that had gone very wrong while they were celebrating an Easter event. They were celebrating Resurrection Day in a park when all this erupted. So let's break everything down about what happened. We're going to talk a little bit about Eddie, the man that was murdered. Then we're going to talk about the things that you can do to help your church in case something like this happens, how to prevent something like this from happening, how to react if something like this were to occur. We're going to break it all down. So we talk about the incident, but we also give you tools that you need to help protect your church. I hope you share this with your friends and sit down and just set out a plan for when you have events coming up this Sunday. All right, so let's start from the beginning. This was yesterday, Saturday. I'm filming this Sunday on April 13th, Palm Sunday. Empowerment Ministries Christian Center in Gulfport, Mississippi was celebrating Resurrection Day. All their families had gathered in a park for food and fellowship. Kids were playing, parents were watching, and the church was doing outreach and building community. But in the middle of that piece, violence erupted. Now, look, the event took place at Jack and Florence Golden Sportsplex, which is just down the road from the church that Eddie was from, the victim. Now, at around 2:05 on Saturday, a domestic violence dispute escalated in the parking lot near the end of the event. Now, Deacon Eddie Shed, the church's head of security, stepped in to intervene and shielded children from the threat that was occurring in the parking lot. Now, in that moment, he was shot multiple times and he died at the scene. Now, 3 other people were injured. 1 was airlifted with life-threatening injuries, and 3 suspects were detained. 1 suspect may have been shot and taken to the hospital by private vehicle. Now, that's what we know so far, and we know that this is based off what the press has released, witnesses at the scene that talked to the press. That's where I've got my information so far. I don't really want to bug the church and get any information from them yet because they're still grieving. They did put out a statement, which I'll link their statement from the church in the article that I write for this over at christianwarriortraining.com. You can head over there. I always put in tons of information on training and information on incidents like this. And if I do an update about more information about what has occurred, because more will unfold during the week, I will put that into the weekly crime debrief that I do every Saturday for crimes that affect churches in the United States. Now, let's talk a little bit about Eddie Shed. Now, look, he wasn't just a deacon. He was protecting his flock, the congregants. He died fulfilling his role as both a servant of Christ and a guardian of the church. Now, according to people that knew him, some of the witness statements I heard was he died a hero. He was always looking out for others, and he was there when the doors opened and when the doors shut. And that pretty much describes a lot of you that are watching right now protect their churches. Before we get into some of the lessons learned and some of the things that we can do to help ourselves in case an event like this erupts, I just want to do a little bit of reflection and look at the Bible to kind of help us deal with something like this. When my fellow police officers died in the line of duty. Most recently, I had a friend that was a police officer in Alabama that was murdered in the line of duty. I always go back to John, and he was a great believer, by the way. I always go back to John chapter 15, verse 13, whereas greater love has no one than this, than to lay down one's life for his friends. Now, look, this verse reflects Eddie's sacrifice, where he put himself between danger and the innocent and being a living example of servant leadership, godly courage. Now, let's talk about some of the things that this incident teaches us. Number 1 is situational awareness. This, hands down, is the number 1 thing that has saved me from being severely injured or murdered in the line of duty. If you just keep your eyes up and it's hard. You've been assigned to be a protector of the church and you want to participate, but you've got to constantly be looking up. I'm saying like every 10 seconds, you should have your head up, looking around, scan 360, and then go back to where you're at. Better if you have multiple people so they can just scan their sectors and you're good to go. We're going to talk more about how to coordinate that later. But look, just being situationally aware will help you. As an example, you can see this domestic violence start to kick off from the beginning. And that would let you know that I either need to call 911 and get police started. I need to start moving the people from my event to another location or start creating a barrier, what have you. right? So just that basic situational awareness. Number two, you have to have a security presence that's visible and proactive. Now, look, most churches want their security teams in plain clothes. My personal opinion, as a 30-year career law enforcement officer in dealing with church security, is you all need to be in uniform or have some kind of visible vest or something that identifies you as the church safety team, security team, whatever you want to call it, because it shows that you have authority. It lets others know, man, there's security over there. I should probably stay away and take my business somewhere else. Like, I'm going to beat my wife, so I should probably go away from where there's like visible security and take it somewhere else and away from your people. Having that uniform is a visible deterrent for people to start trouble around you. Now, look, if your church has an event outside of your church walls, scale up your security team so that your outdoor event is staffed by the same number of people or even more, because now you're in a place that you can't control, but you're going to want to scale up your security to protect your people. Number three, communication is critical. You have to have radios so you can communicate with other team members to let them know, hey, heads up, there's a problem. I see a domestic violence or a fight brewing in the parking lot. I need you guys to be heads up, and then everybody stop enjoying that time and then start moving to a place to start protecting your people. So when a situation erupts like gunfire, it is super important to have that radio communication so you can start moving and communicating and getting your people to safety. Number four, you have to have reactionary planning for third-party violence. Now, look, this didn't erupt because of the church. This erupted outside of the church event, and then it was brought to the church people. You have to remember this is a personal conflict that bled into that church event. So churches need contingency plans for non-affiliated disturbances that escalate near their gathering. So you have to start thinking when you show up to that outside event, you have to look and go, all right, here are some evacuation points. If we need to evacuate our people, the problem is most likely going to occur in the parking lot. We need to look where we can evacuate our people. Like there might be a large building nearby that we can put them around a corner from the building. You need child protection teams. Here, Eddie was protecting the children. I have no doubt that Eddie took some bullets that were probably going to hit some kids. So, man, like if I was going to die, man, I don't like none of us, I know where I'm going when I die. We know where Eddie went when he passed. But if you were going to die, protecting children is probably like the best way to go, right? We know that he saved those kids. You have to have some kind of a team or a person assigned just to the children so you can protect them. You have to have defined armed and unarmed roles. So put the unarmed people where they need to be, helping the children move to a location while armed people keep guns between the children and the threat that is erupting. And then you want rally points, which is just a point where you can gather up your people. You want medical triage points and I know a lot of people, they don't think about this. This is something I've always thought about when we do large events. If you have a large event, where am I going to put all my casualties? Because if you have casualties spread all over, let's say multiple children were shot. Eddie didn't take those bullets and now multiple children are shot and they're all in different locations. It's really rough to treat all these people versus you bring them to one center location and now you treat them in one place and you have shared resources. Communication is a little bit easier. So think about those medical triage points and those rally points. All right, number 5, what I want you to do is train enough people to respond. So here we had one man who tried to stop this and it cost him his life. You have to have well-trained, and I'm not saying that he was the only one there. I'm just throwing it out there. A well-trained multi-person security team, spaced and mobile, and intervene earlier and more effectively. You can communicate. Imagine if it's one person that comes up to some people that are about to pop off and it's a danger to your children and you say, hey, you need to leave, versus 7 or 10 people show up and say, move your stuff down the road, right? After you've called police and 911 and everybody's responding, right? So you just want enough people there to evacuate. And not everybody's got to be armed, but to evacuate those children, evacuate your congregants. It's one thing to tell the adults like, hey, get around the corner around that building. You tell a bunch of 3-year-olds to 10-year-olds, hey, I need you to go around that building. They won't really understand. You need to gather them up, protect them, and then get them moving, and then, herding sheep, right? So these are the best things that I can give you to protect your church and your congregation when you have something going on away from your church. This is what we know about how Eddie died. I think we should all take some time to pray for Eddie. I mean, this is rough. I'm trying to find the right words, but Eddie died a hero. He was a church security team lead protecting children. And that's the most honorable thing ever. I want us to pray for Eddie's family and his congregation. I know that church is going through a very hard time. For that church, if there's anything that we can do at Christian Warrior Training to help you, please let us know. We would love to come help you with whatever it is that you need to, as far as security assessments and the security team for your church. Look, you guys are doing an honorable job. This incident shows us how important it is. From here, I want you to go and sit down with your team, and I want you to debrief this incident, and I want you to talk about what your team can do if a similar situation erupted. I want you to take the points that I made to you, figure out how to implement those into your next external event or even an internal event. There's lots of crime that occurs in parking lots of churches where it's not even the congregants. None of the people involved with the shooting, except for Eddie, were involved with the church, the suspects. None of the suspects were affiliated with the church. They are just a third party that came upon that church. So I want you to start thinking about what you can do to prevent something like that from happening at your church and how you can react to that. I want you to pray for that church, for Eddie's family, the children that witnessed this, for the other people at the park that day that happened to see this. I want you to pray for the protection of our churches. We're coming up to a dangerous time. April is a dangerous time for Christians, just based off of the attacks that have happened in the past. Although this wasn't a terrorism-related event, it does bring home that Christians are vulnerable during this time of year. So please pray for the protection of our churches during this time. And then I want you to remember your ABCs. Always be caring.